a near-death experience, profound conversion, and chili cheese Coneys? Erik Huff is our guest on Spirit Spire, starting right now.
Broadcasting from the Cathedral of the Assumption in Louisville, Kentucky, this is Spirit Spire. And now, here is your host.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to Spirit Spire. I'm Bryan Cain, joined today by my co-hosts Isaac Fox and Erik Huff. Now, if you've been tuning into Spirit Spire for a long time, where we've been running for 2 or 3 episodes now, then you would know that sometimes we have a guest, but sometimes we interview ourselves. And that's what we're doing today. We're going to introduce you to one of our co-hosts, Erik Huff. Erik, thanks for being here.
Thanks, Bryan, for that sad and desperate sounding introduction.
No problem. Yeah, it does make it sound like we weren't able to book any.
Yeah. We're also one Spirit Spire guy short too. So not only can we not get a guest, we couldn't get everyone present here that's a part of this anyway.
This is part of making a weekly podcast.
That's right.
The reality is that we canceled several guests just to have you on the show.
That's right. And another member of the team.
Yeah, we also canceled John in multiple ways.
None of this is true, folks.
So we're gonna interview you today, Erik. You've got an interesting story. Why don't you contextualize it first, though? So you're a convert. You're going to tell us a little bit about your conversion, but give us a little tiny taste of growing up in Cincinnati, Ohio, before you do.
Yeah. So I grew up all over Cincinnati, Ohio. So east side, west side. Early on, I grew up in Hamilton, which is north of Cincinnati. In a small suburb of Hamilton called Lindenwold that's about South Hamilton and West Fairfield, a small little town there. And then from there, I kind of moved all over the place. And then I have family all over Cincinnati.
So I've heard many stories of Erik Huff's childhood. One thing that stands out to me is that you were a very precocious child with very early memories, probably earlier than a lot of people that I know. There's a few moments that I think are funny, but are there any stories from very early childhood that make you laugh or that you think are worth sharing on this podcast?
Yeah. So when I was really small, my mom would always tell me like stuff that seemed obvious to me already, but I was a small child, so it's normal for a mom to tell a 3-year-old not to dart out into traffic or something like that. So I was always giving her like a hard time on that, which I really shouldn't have been. But one example would be the darting out into traffic. Every time she would stop the car, she would say, "Don't dart out into traffic." And it annoyed me. So, one day I had my grandma and my aunt and everybody's in the car, and I started yelling.
You're 3 at this point.
3, yeah. I started yelling, let me out so I can dart out into traffic. To everyone's horror, because they had no idea what I was talking about. So that kind of sums up most of my human interactions from that point on.
I feel like for a 3-year-old to, 1, remember that, 2, like make a rational decision to like prank his mom because he's annoyed. I mean, I have a 3-year-old who's actually turning 4 today, the day of this recording. Happy birthday to my son, Augustin.
Awesome.
I'm not sure, maybe he does think like that, and maybe I just annoy him all the time when I tell him not to do things. But I struggle to imagine that level of thought happening in his brain.
Yeah, I think too, though, like there's a balance to it, because there's just like perfectly normal things, and there's even a meme about this where I just don't get it. So like every other human being in the world has been socialized on, I can't give a specific example right now, on things, and I just go, what? Like I've never heard of that. And so it goes both ways.
All right.
All of these are marks of genius, right? The early precociousness, the awareness, the intelligence, and then the inability to comprehend normal everyday things. I think that's all signs of genius.
I think if those are signs of genius, we're in really big trouble.
Well, fair enough. So you grew up a precocious youngster. I'm remembering a story of is there a horror movie or something that you watched? What is that story? Is that something you want to share?
I can't think
publicly. Does it have to do with Chucky? Do you have a story about Chucky?
He may still be too traumatized.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I know. You might have made me go into a place that I'm blacked off.
Okay, well, fair enough. I feel like you've told me a story about seeing a horror movie way too early.
I definitely saw Chucky way too early when I was like 2 or something. Yeah. Clearly remember him like the one and only time I ever saw it, and he's like tying up a kid and burying him alive in the backyard or something. Yeah. Okay,
well, fair enough. I don't remember exactly what that story was, but it made an impression on me. So you grow up a precocious child. Tell us, give us some context for middle school.
For middle school. So early on, we'll go back a little earlier than that. Before middle school, I was raised Southern Baptist, and I had a pretty strong faith life as a child. I remember like praying by my bed and like my lights being off and my mom stepping on me when she came to check on me because she didn't anticipate me being beside the bed there, and like being on the playground, and I would pray and stuff, and the teachers was like, "Is everything okay over here?" And I would be like, "I'm just praying," and they're like, "What a weird kid." They would either be like, "Wow, what a really good kid," which was not the case, or "Wow, what a weird kid." But about the time when I hit middle school, I definitely started to drift off and become interested in things that people in middle school and high school become interested in that aren't faith or God, and became absorbed in that and moved away from my faith altogether. It's really big through high school into a lot of Eastern religions, Eastern mythology, transcendental meditation type of things.
How'd you come across that, or how'd you get into that?
Just reading. Still just reading a lot. Probably like a quest for truth.
Are you finding like online or at the library?
Books,
or both?
internet.
Okay.
Yeah. This was still.
This was when people still used libraries.
Yeah, people still use the libraries. I think like the amount of stuff I would print out in the labs at school was amazing. Like,
okay.
Probably printed hundreds of dollars, if not thousands, worth of material that I could just read throughout the day in class instead of following lesson plans and what I was supposed to be paying attention to. So got it really into that. Got really into politics and philosophies. All of them very modern. Stemming off, I think my entry point would have been like anarchism and kind of like the philosophical, intellectual side of that later in high school. Like I said, mixed with maybe different faith traditions and Eastern stuff, which was very, motivated by truth and an interest in learning. And then that all kind of fell by the wayside when I hit college. And once there, I just really bought into everything I was being taught in school and kind of put away any of my own seeking and my personal,
So to go back for a second, so, did you have a friend group that was somewhat anarchist, that was was into some of these spiritualities? Is this solely, driven by your own desire for truth, or like what did your friend group look like at that time?
So like, it's hard to say. So I would say like, I had a friend group that was like more into that stuff, but I would say probably they were more into like smoking pot and listening to me tell them all this crazy stuff rather than they were really into it themselves, but definitely showed interest in me and what I had to do there. I got along with a lot of people in high school, so I was kind of like that weird geek, but not fitting in one way isn't really the case. I kind of meshed well with everyone. I can't really think that I had any real enemies in high school. Went to a large high school, was friends with pretty much everybody. So there wasn't anybody who really met that mold, but I was able to still be friends with a lot of people.
So would you say that there was some element of like that you were doing some of this research just to share it? Like you talked about how people would like to hear you talk about these things.
I don't know. I think
was it solely motivated by your own thirst for whatever
it was only my own personal interest. Okay. Yeah, my own boring interests. So,
I mean,
yeah.
I don't know that they're boring. But,
I was kind of curious with the Eastern religions, Eastern mythologies, political, philosophical stuff you mentioned, and the anarchism. Was there anything that kind of tied all that together, or were these just things that randomly you had found very interesting? You know, like maybe a spirituality from here and then a political thought from here, or was there anything sort of cohesive worldview that was informing that?
I don't think so. So if I had to guess kind of what it was too, is around that time I was prescribed on, because of my ADHD or whatever, I was prescribed on some serious, medication, which I don't think that I need now. I definitely don't need now, but I don't think I needed then. And it would become like hyper-focused. And so it would be like taking speed or something, I guess, and just hyper-focusing on this materials. And instead of, I think that the object of putting me on the medication was that I would pay attention in school, but I was coming up with what I wanted to pay attention to rather than what they were going to make me pay attention to. So, yeah, I got a little bit off track. I was still learning a lot, but definitely not what the public school curriculum wanted to teach me.
Right.
Okay. So now let's head into college then. After this break, we'll be right back with more from Erik Huff.
Hey everyone, this week's episode is sponsored by Family Renewal Project. FRP is a local theology of the body apostolate in service to the Archdiocese of Louisville. They're dedicated to renewing the culture through the renewal of the family. They have so many amazing things going on, so check them out at familyrenewalproject.com.
All right, welcome back to Spirit Spire. I'm here again with Isaac Fox and Erik Huff. We're hearing about the adventures, the thoughts, the testimony, if you will, of Erik Huff. Erik, when you hear the word testimony, what do you think of?
Probably more of camp when I was a kid, and it was very Southern Baptist. We would go up to Seneca Lake near Senecaville, Ohio, and hear these adults give these very wild testimonies, like, and then I prayed to God that God, if let me catch this big old fish. And as I was praying, you wouldn't believe it, this giant fish just hopped out of the water and I caught him. So that's what my mind kind of harkens back to a little bit.
Do you have any big fish testimonies for us?
Of my own?
Yeah.
You know what? I'm not a great fisherman.
Okay. Maybe you're not praying enough.
I've not been out there enough to pray for a giant. I just want a little one.
Right.
I just want to catch something.
My family has the worst luck when it comes to
I just want to get a bite.
Catching, hunting, any of that stuff.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, fair enough. So we're in college, and we're talking about your faith journey. So you said that you kind of just started paying attention to what you were being taught in college. This is a shift, it seems, from high school where you were paying attention to whatever you wanted to pay attention to. It sounds like something in college had captured your attention. Maybe the teachers were finally on your level or something like that, and then and so you're starting to pay attention in college. So where are you spiritually and philosophically at that point?
Yeah, I think once I got to college, the teachers were much more convincing, and it might not have been, anything that they did differently than my high school teachers. It might have just been my maturity level, that I was willing to pay attention to something outside of myself. I think my primary goal though when I was in college was to party it up with my friends. So I think school is kind of a secondary thing. So when I was in that class, I'm doing everything I can to get as much done as I can and learn as much as I can in that class. So when I go home for the day, that I can have some fun. I can do some stuff with my buddies, which created its own kind of problems and struggles. But yeah, I think that's what it was.
So do you just become kind of moral relativist, hedonist, sort of your classic millennial at this point, or is there still an element of spirituality? Are you still into the Eastern religions? Where are you in regards to all that?
So I think anything spiritual, or anything with the pursuit of the true, the beautiful, and the good are kind of out the window. It's definitely materialist, but it's not hedonism or overconsumption of things. I think it's more into, I get really into like, things that are morally right and just in their own way, if looked at rightly ordered with other things. So social justice, I think, is a big one. Always had a heart for the poor. Mm-hmm. And so even though I am going out and drinking with my friends and drinking way too much, definitely still have a big heart for the poor. Especially in Cincinnati.
What did that look like in college? Like, how are you living that out?
I would say just encountering people on the street. So where the bars are in Cincinnati was and is also where the homeless people are, where the history of the homeless are in Cincinnati, and those social justice movements. There's a guy, I think his name was Buddy Gray. It was all lowercase, and basically, and over the Rhine, it's a set of bars and venues and restaurants and stuff now. But when I started college, I think pretty much he had this. I don't know if it was a company or what, but he owned all of that, and there were homeless people who lived down there and over the Rhine. So I kind of was there as it shifted from that into something more gentrified, with food and restaurants, and kind of partook a little bit of both.
So any other things in college that are notable in regards to your faith journey?
Not in college per se.
So take us to the next big moment then.
So I think I guess it was still in college. So as I was wrapping up in college, I started dating my wife now, Gabrielle. And she went to Xavier University. I went to the University of Cincinnati. It's a pretty big rivalry there. And so a lot of my identity came from being from Cincinnati, going to the University of Cincinnati. So really proud, and a lot of our relationship revolved around that rivalry between Xavier and UC. So we would go to the games and stuff together. So I'd say one of the big moments there is I went to Mass for the first time with Gabrielle at Xavier at Bellarmine Chapel on campus, and it was Ash Wednesday. This was 2015. It was Ash Wednesday, and it was the Crosstown Shootout. And then in either the year before or the year before that, there was that big drama with the Crosstown Punch-Out, where UC and Xavier got into a big fight.
Okay.
And the players, it was terribly embarrassing. And then both schools chose to embrace the fighting. So that I think they had to cancel it for a year or two.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, you would go on Xavier's campus and they would be yelling zip them up and stuff. Like they're going to, like these rich preppy kids were going to murder somebody. I don't know what they were trying to say.
Xavier being a Catholic school, is that right?
Jesuit. Yeah, Jesuit.
Yeah. That explains everything.
Very Christian.
Yeah, really, really Christian attitude there. And so, and that's no fault of the administration, obviously. But anyways, they had to pause it for a while. So this was the first one, I think, when it was back. I could be off a little bit. And so we went to Mass first for Ash Wednesday. It was the first time I'd been to Mass. And the president of Xavier, Father Michael Graham, he's kind of sitting with everyone. And at the sign of peace, he was shaking everyone's hand. And I had a bunch of UC stuff on under my jacket or whatever I was wearing there. because we were about to go watch the game somewhere after. And when he shook my hand, he said, "You don't go to school here." It's what he said to me, and then he just turned around to the next person.
He couldn't see anything that you were wearing that would give you away.
Nothing you see was like visible, and yeah. So I wasn't Catholic, and I was a UC guy at Xavier during Crosstown Shootout on Ash Wednesday. So I was at Mass. So I was like, ooh, I was busted.
He's on to me.
Yeah, I was so busted, And so yeah, we watched the game. I got my ashes. It was pretty cool. Rite of passage. And then we went and we watched the game at a bar or something. And then that night I had to drop Gabrielle off, and Xavier won, of course. And when I get in the elevator to go visit with her up in her dorm afterwards, I get in the elevator and I'm pretty sure it was like all the freshmen of the Xavier basketball team, and I'm like zipping my coat up all the way to make sure the UC stuff isn't showing. So yeah, that was a big moment there with Xavier and UC.
What do you think that moment? I mean, was there a spiritual element there? Like, was there some sort of moment you remember about Mass or about Ash Wednesday? I mean, that was probably the first time you had ashes on your forehead, right?
Yeah, it definitely sparked some curiosity.
Okay.
Yeah, it definitely opened me up a little bit to it. There's a sense of mystery to it, obviously, to the Mass itself, to the way that Catholics act in the holy water, the fact that students are going to church before a athletic event. The fact that the president of the school recognized that I didn't go to school there and called me out on it. So there's a lot of little mysterious things. I don't know how much of a spiritual experience, though.
Okay, so then you were going to talk about something after college, and that was some backstory for it, I think. So now lead us in as you're leaving college. I think that now we're starting to get into the meat of the story.
Yeah, so...
or the heart of the story, maybe.
I think I have to back it up again, too.
Okay, that's all right.
So before all of that, my dad in 2014, he had a major stroke. And he was in the hospital. The first day he had no movement, couldn't speak. It was definitely a grave situation, and so when I was there, and my dad was everything, typical millennial fashion. I probably couldn't tie my own shoelaces without my dad's help, even though I was 18, 19 at the time, maybe even 20, I don't remember. And so it was devastating to me, obviously, because it was my dad, but there's also a selfish portion of me where did I have the ability to do things on my own now? And so when he was in that hospital bed, I became very angry. And so, like I said, I was very secular at that point in my life, no faith at all, no spirituality at all. So I went into the little end room where people go to wait on their loved ones, and I started to become very upset. I started to throw chairs around and basically throw an adult temper tantrum. And I remember saying, if there is a God, show yourself to me, or something like that, even though I don't believe in God. And when I turned around, there was a wooden crucifix on the wall. And I remember just shutting up and leaving the room immediately and ending the temper tantrum right there. And then it was either then or the next day when I went back to the hospital, my dad had improved greatly and was able to speak. And you could see, the roots of his personality coming back out and showing great improvement and able to start physical and occupational therapy at that point too.
So that moment in the hospital, which is like 2014 or 15, you said, you would think that's probably what kind of opened the door to Christianity again, potentially. The Christianity you'd left, your childhood faith.
Yeah, it was, I honestly too, because like I said, in high school, my vision of God was certainly not a Christian one. Mm-hmm. So when I abandoned any kind of spiritual belief, those beliefs that I had set in my head were not Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
So when I turned around and I saw a crucifix on the wall, just like the most, I don't know, Christian symbol there is, I was shocked by it too. That was not the God I anticipated to see, I guess. Even though it was a Catholic hospital, you know. So it wasn't like this was, it was Mercy. So Mercy Fairfield. But, so that would be expected.
That's 14-15. Then the Xavier Cincinnati game was when?
15.
Ash Wednesday Mass. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, so then you graduate?
In between there, yeah.
Okay.
At that point. And because of my dad's stroke, I had to take a lot of time off school. So I got really behind. But I was able to roll my credits over and get an associate's degree in 15 and graduate then. So I graduate from University of Cincinnati 15 with an associate's degree. And so then still dating Gabrielle. I start working and then full-time. And then fall of that year in September 11th, is a UC Xavier soccer game. And I think I'm remembering all the dates, right? And so there's a UC Xavier soccer game at UC. So I'm picking Gabrielle up from Xavier. And as I'm picking her up, it's pouring down raining and there's a bad storm.
And with you right there in the rain, we're going to take a break. We're going to come back in just a minute with more from Erik Huff. Be right back.
Hello everyone, this episode is sponsored by Holy Angels Academy. Holy Angels is an independent school shining the light on the Catholic and classical tradition. With a focus on virtue and holiness, their mission is clear and simple: to help their students attain the end for which they were created, eternal happiness with God. Check them out at holyangelslouisville.com.
All right, welcome back to Spirit Inspire. I'm your host, Bryan Cain, and we're interviewing today our good friend, Erik Huff. Welcome back.
Thank you.
Thank you for sharing so far.
Yeah, of course.
All right, when we left you, it was a dark and stormy day.
It was a day, yeah.
Yeah, a dark and stormy day. And you were going to a soccer game. You were driving to pick up Gabrielle, is that correct?
I think so.
All right.
That's where we're at. So, as I got off the exit, there's a split between Reading Road and Victory Parkway in Cincinnati going towards Xavier. Xavier being on Victory Parkway. And there's kind of an island in the middle of that split. And right at that V, and there's a young lady with only one leg, and she was just standing out in the pouring rain with a sign. And I thought, I don't have any money to give her right now. I was just broke, just got out of college, but I do have a Xavier umbrella that I can get rid of then I don't have to use it when I go to the UC Xavier game. And so I said, I'll just give her this umbrella, which I didn't want anyway. And so I go down Victory Parkway, and I turn, there's a street there. I forget what it's called. I want to say it's like Aslan, but I don't think it's Aslan. But something like Aslan. And I turned on that street, and as I was coming back down Reading Road, a large pickup truck slammed into the side of my car. And he hit me so hard, I remember I could visually see like his paint in my car right here, in my peripheral. And it shattered the glass. The tires were kind of knocked up over the curb. And I kind of went down the hill. I hit 2 or 3 telephone poles and kept building momentum on the slick grass until I slammed into a stump near the bottom of the hill. And there's smoke kind of filling into the car. I could feel heat and actual fire. And I looked out my window, and there's just people recording me on their cell phones as they went by. Just like this extreme indifference.
Yeah.
And it was really painful. I think maybe that more than anything physical. And so I climbed out of the window of the car. Obviously, the glass was shattered, and my hand was bleeding really bad. I had a lot of glass in my hands, and then my feet were soaked. I had Toms on, like the slipper ones, and they were just soaked in blood. I still have that pair of Toms in my basement, but just completely drenched. And then I had the airbag had deployed in a way that kind of smashed the glass into my forehead. So it wasn't any bad lacerations or anything, but at the time I didn't know why my face was bleeding a lot. And once you get even a little nick on your head, that's like a lot of blood.
Yeah.
So I climbed out, and I was pretty shook up, and there's smoke coming out of the car. I remember when I climbed out, I kind of fell out, and the blood from my hand was just kind of getting washed down into the gutter. And just a really, really dark moment. There was, I always forget this detail for some reason, but there was like this one homeless gentleman who came up out of the woods, and he probably only had this towel to his name. And he took the towel and he like wrapped it around me, and he wrapped my hand up with it until the fire department got there.
While people who could have helped were just...
There was a lot of people.
Filming.
Yeah. And
But the poor who you had served.
Yeah.
I don't know how well I had served them or they served me, but
Maybe well enough.
yeah, he was really sweet. So, like I said, that's probably the only thing he had was that towel. And so I remember I was just like, when the police got there and the fire truck or whatever, I just was like, I just want to give that lady my umbrella. And I kept saying that over and over. And I went into the emergency room, and they never got all the glass out of my hand. There's still some in my hand right now. And yeah, it's just a terrible experience. Like I said, even after I went to the emergency room, there's just like, just met with total indifference, maybe except for that one homeless person. So, but I never forgot about that lady. And so moving forward, I promise the story has lighter notes later. But moving forward,
Well, before you go there, so I mean, maybe tell us a little bit about. What's the spirit? Is there a spiritual impact? Does this at all relate? This it's a dark moment, obviously, and you're experiencing the indifference of man and sort of sin.
yeah.
Does it make you wonder if God exists? Does it just confirm that he doesn't? Is there any?
I'd say closer to that, like a confirmation, like that God doesn't exist, like almost to the point like overriding any of the experiences I had prior. So, and then in that point in my life, I fell into, from there I started to despair more and more in life, depression and anxiety, and and not just because of the car accident, but personal choices and other trials and tribulations of life contributing to that. So it was a pretty dark time. There's also around that time too, I think in maybe in the following year, I did have a really good friend who was a Christian and a good influence to me. And he was a local comic book artist in Cincinnati, and he was an illustrator for DC and Marvel. Pretty well respected guy that I had met, and he had kind of given me. He'd probably given me the only glimpse of a credible Christian, I guess, at that point in my life, and he ended up passing away in a car accident between 2015 and the end of 2016, maybe late 2016, I would say that it was. So.
And when's the car accident?
My car accident was September 11th. I want to say 15.
Okay.
So whenever that you see Xavier's soccer game, yeah. So throughout that year, there were several things that were drawing me away from God. And then including, that time with the 2016 presidential election, people were very divisive. You'd be hard pressed to see God in other people at that time, or at least where I was. And it might have been a lack of perspective on my part. So yeah, just a lot of anxiety, a lot of despair, still living alone. I know that, loneliness can be a root cause, and then overworking myself too. So I was working 24-hour shifts sometimes more. Like me and my buddies, we would have competitions to see who could work the most and the most hours consecutively. And I think everybody lost. So going through there, I really put myself into my work, into the cool activities maybe I could do at the end of a work week, or the vacation I could have maybe once a year. That's what I really live for.
All right, so let's leave you there in the darkness. We'll take a break, and we'll be back for one more segment. Hopefully, there's some light.
Some light at the end
in this final segment. We'll be right back with more Erik Huff.
Hey everyone, here at Spirit Spire, we want to serve our community by highlighting God's work in our parishes, schools, and apostolates. We hope to bring renewal and unity between all those in the body of Christ. If you would like a shout out in the next episode of Spirit Spire, go to spiritinspire.com or email us at spiritinspire@gmail.com. Thanks and God bless.
And we're back to Spirit Spire. We're joined by Erik Huff. We left him in the darkness, the despair, the doubt, the loneliness, the overworking, the living for the weekend,
That would be a great name of a song.
I think working.
Is it working for the weekend?
Yeah, that would be a good name for it.
We could redo all this since I just sidetracked everything.
No, we're keeping it now. It's too late. So, let's hear your this is a very dark moment, obviously.
Yeah.
Physically, spiritually, very powerful.
Yeah.
Do things get better?
Let's hope so.
Generally speaking, not in your life, but generally.
Yeah.
Yeah, all right.
You're sitting in between us, so things are going to be pretty bad right now.
Yeah. I ended up here.
That's right. Oof.
Sorry, man. Car wreck was nothing now.
Yeah. So moving from there, I sustained, another injury into my hand. I lost a little bit of mobility in my thumb at that time. I have it fully back now. But just continuous. I couldn't catch a break. And I think in hindsight, just a serious lack of grace. And maybe that had to do with my own sinfulness too. And my ability to respond to God and to his calling and to his grace and mercy. But so at this point in my life, like I said, everything was already pretty harsh and grim. The next fall, I think, into 2016, I'm dealing with some personal health issues. My girlfriend at the time, now my wife, she goes away to Rome for quite a substantial amount of time, I think, for school. So she's there studying at least a few weeks, if not a month. I'm trying to remember. And then during that time, my grandfather, my papaw, is really close to, gets terminal cancer and passes away. And before he died, I only had 1 day off a week from work. And I would go that 1 day off a week from work and I would spend it with him. And since we were in Cincinnati, he was in Northern Kentucky, but since we were in Cincinnati, he loved Gold Star chili. Mm-hmm. So I would go get him Gold Star chili cheese Coneys.
Is that a Cincinnati thing? Because I've never heard of Gold Star.
Yeah, Gold Star.
It's like a rival to Skyline.
Okay,
yeah,
gotcha.
Yeah, like Skyline.
The less successful.
Cincinnati
chili chain.
That's a controversial statement in Cincinnati.
It's one step below Skyline.
I intentionally didn't say that.
Yeah.
In terms of franchising,
it's similar to McDonald's versus Burger King.
Gotcha.
Yeah. So.
And where do you stand on that important issue?
Definitely Camp Washington chili.
Oh, I meant McDonald's versus Burger King.
McDonald's versus Burger King.
Yeah.
You know, I never see Burger King anymore.
I'm a Burger King guy, but I was just
Burger
curious.
King is very affordable.
Yeah. And I feel
They're
like
the only ones that haven't raised their prices.
It's like a real
20
burger.
years.
astronomically.
Their burger's like a real burger. Like, I guess that's meat to it. It's substantial.
Yeah. I'm a Burger King.
Do you remember they had like, I think they were like breakfast hash browns with cheese in them?
I don't remember.
At one time at Burger King.
It sounds sinfully delicious.
Yeah. The breakfast though, the Chris sandwich, that's not as good as
The McGriddle is the ultimate breakfast.
I can't do fast food breakfast. There's something about
Not even
it.
McGriddle?
No.
The McDonald's bagel. I'm glad that's back. my younger sister,
To be fair, I don't know if I've ever had a McGriddle.
she petitioned McDonald's. She said, I think once every 2 months since they got rid of the McDonald's bagel until they brought it back. So Shannon, I'm really proud of you.
That's right. That's good stick-to-itiveness.
Yeah.
This episode brought to you by Burger King.
Yeah. If we could not bring up fast food every...
Because our first episode
yeah.
of the Archbishop was Taco Bell.
Yeah, exactly.
Which was also me. Maybe I have food on my mind.
Yeah.
We gotta stop doing this on Monday
For someone
afternoons.
who has a... kind of a bougier restaurant.
Yeah.
You do seem rather fond of fast food.
Well, it's interesting because when we interviewed the Archbishop and today, I have not eaten on either one of those days. So maybe there's a subconscious hunger going on there.
We're going to have the Spirit Spire snack cabinet.
Yes, I can go for a taco right now. Anyway, Eric, I think I derailed the conversation.
Okay, so where we were was Gold Star Chili. You would bring your Papa
Yeah.
Gold Star Chili.
Yeah, so I would take him 2 chili cheese conies, and he would eat those 2 chili cheese conies, and we would just hang out. And I remember I knew, his time was short, and it was really the end. He deteriorated a lot, but I brought those 2 chili cheese conies, and they laid on his counter, and they just got stale, and there was kind of flies buzzing around them where he didn't eat. And
This was one day that you went to visit him.
Yeah.
Do you remember rough time frame?
Between, I think he passed away sometime in October.
2016 still?
16,
Okay.
yeah.
So you'd been doing this every week for, a number of weeks, I guess? Take him the 2 Gold Star chili cheese
for a
conies?
while, probably through the summer and into the fall.
Wow. Okay. All right, so then there's this one day where he doesn't eat them.
Yeah, and he doesn't eat the chili cheese conies, and so yeah, it just really impacted me. Like I can still see the conies. I can't even remember. I don't think what he looked like at that moment, but I remember like driving home and just kind of like weeping from it, and not too much longer. In retrospect, I'm thinking it might have been towards the later side, like maybe fall entering into winter. So maybe a month or more after this. I've had to reflect on it a lot lately. I'm like, when did this happen? So I was driving. Well, during that time with the health issue, I think I was still dealing with some trauma, maybe from the car accident, and then with my papaw passing away, I just like have these like nightmares at night, and I just wake up in the middle of the night terrors where I'd wake up in my body, but I have no autonomy of my body, so I'd be awake, but I couldn't like control my breathing or move my arms or
Like
anything.
a sleep paralysis kind of thing?
Yeah.
I've had that. That's scary.
Yeah.
Would you feel like a presence in the room or anything like that? Sometimes that's associated with people like thinking they see shapes or scary figures.
I've had that happen. I've had that happen later in life, not associated with anything. I think that I didn't have a radar for it. I think it was just very
Still scary though.
just terrifying. By everything was just merely physical, merely biological. But yeah, it was just really hard time. And after my wife, ex-girlfriend at the time, came back, I was going to go visit her at Xavier and then driving back to my apartment. And one night I stayed there, maybe later than I should have. And I'm driving home really late at night, like 3 o'clock in the morning. And I start one of those fits with God again, like just thinking about all this stuff. And it was unbearable. I don't think,
But you didn't believe God existed at this time, right?
Right. So
you're still angry at him?
This hypocrisy, right? And, but I wanted to believe in God, I guess, or maybe I didn't, I don't know. But,
even if it was just maybe to put a name to your anger, to blame,
to blame. It just was so disordered, things seemed that way in my life, and maybe it was because of me. But I remember getting really angry and praying like, if there is a God, do something so amazing I can't deny it. And I was really thinking about those chili cheese Coneys when I was getting angry, and so when I was driving, I thought, okay, if God's going to do something so amazing that I can't deny it, either fire is going to rain out of the sky, lightning's going to strike in a crazy way, I don't know, something supernatural like that, or nothing at all is going to happen because there is no God. So those were my two options in my own mind, and I guess the options I gave to God. And so fire didn't immediately rain out of the sky, so I knew there was no God. So I'm driving right after that, and I'm like, see, and then I see an arm, somebody reaching out on the side of the road at 3 o'clock in the morning, flagging my car down. And I'm like, well, that's weird. And I knew I just said this thing, so I'm like, I'm gonna pull over, even though I'm in a sketchy part of town, 3 o'clock in the morning, and it's not usually safe to pick people up on the side of the road anyway. I think this is the one time I've done that. And so I pull off, and I'm amazed as I'm rolling down my window. I still had power windows at that time. That's a great feeling. I didn't have to crank like I did now. And I'm rolling down my window, and it's the young lady with the one leg that I wanted to give the umbrella. And she reaches her head into my car, and she says, hey, I don't think I'm crazy. I don't want money or anything. Can you just drive me up to Gold Star Chili and get me 2 chili cheese Coneys? And I was like, don't think I'm crazy, but get in my car right now.
And specifically 2. She said she wanted 2.
2 chili cheese Coneys. And so she gets in my car, and I tell her pretty much everything I just told you. Not everything, but everything about my papa and what I had just said. And she really starts to think I'm crazy. She starts scooting towards the door a little bit. But I take her through, get her the 2 chili cheese Coneys. And I did interact with her maybe once or twice after that. So keep that young lady in your prayers. And
this is over a year since you had first seen her and had the accident?
Yeah, and I had seen her before that maybe, and after that 1 or 2 times. But it did stand out in my mind about the umbrella. And I told her about the umbrella, all of that stuff. So she's like, wow, thanks, Yeah. So anyways, at that point, I kind of have a conviction with this. And unlike the time when I was in the hospital and I saw the crucifix, I start to take it very seriously. And so I start to pursue God a little bit more. Whereas before there was really no pursuit on my behalf.
But that was amazing enough to take it seriously.
I thought so. And so it could have either been a very strange coincidence, or something very providential and very real. And as the more time progresses, the more convicted I am that obviously it was something providential and something very real. So yeah, I start to take faith seriously, and I start to pursue different Christian denominations. I start taking my dad to church and going to church with him at a mega church in Cincinnati. And I keep hitting these notes, but things don't quite line up to where I think they should be now that I am pursuing God. And I've got a taste of who God is and what his personality is. Do things like I get rebaptized, but that doesn't really do anything for me, and doesn't seem like the next step in my spiritual journey. But I do go to all different churches and pray, particularly when no one's there. So I'll go into a church and I'll pray, but not on Sunday during a service time where there's other people that I'd have to interact with, but more feeling it out on my own.
I'm curious. I actually meant to ask you this earlier when you were telling the story of going to your first Mass on Ash Wednesday with Gabrielle. You said you were raised Southern Baptist, right? So did you have any thoughts previous about the Catholic Church? Because I know there can be a certain amount of anti-Catholic prejudice there. Was it just not on your radar at all, or do you think they're like crazy, anything but that?
Yeah, so I would say since I was raised Southern Baptist, I knew that the God I was interacting with was definitely a Christian God, but I knew absolutely Catholicism was wrong.
Right.
So without a shadow of a doubt, but I was a little bit more open to it because everything was fresh. So at this time, since my papa passed away, I moved in and I lived with my mama in Latonia, Kentucky. And I drive through Covington and cross the Brent Spence Bridge. No, the Roebling Suspension Bridge, or the Humming Bridge, as I think people in Covington a lot more call it that. And so I crossed the Roebling Suspension Bridge to get to work every day. And I would pass the cathedral. And even when I was secular, I was really into art. And inside the Cathedral Basilica in Covington, it's the largest painting that my favorite artist, Frank Duveneck, ever painted, which is an amazing story in its own right, that he painted that and his life and his reconversion at the end of his life. But I would go in there just to see this painting. And I knew it to be a very Christian painting, and it portrays the crucifixion. And then on the left-hand side, it has a benediction of the Blessed Sacrament, showing kind of the future. And then on the right-hand side, tucked underneath the crucifix, it has Melchizedek with his priestly duties and the bread and wine in a temple. And all of it's very high church. So the crucifixion, Melchizedek, and this benediction are all, and it's like an ancient Catholic benediction. It's not like a very modern one. It looks like it's from like the 1200s or something. So
for context for people listening, Melchizedek is the priest king that Abraham goes to and offers a sacrifice. And I think Melchizedek offers a blessing of bread and wine. Is that right?
Bread and wine, that's very theologically rich.
This is thousands of years, or at least 1,000 years before Christ.
Yeah. And that's in the canon in the Mass, in some of the Eucharistic prayers, where Melchizedek and his offering, and was it the offering of Abel?
Yep.
The just and your servant Melchizedek, I think that's mentioned.
And I think there's a psalm that says, "You're a priest forever in the line of Melchizedek."
Which then Hebrews takes up to demonstrate that is prophetic of Christ.
Exactly.
Who, interestingly enough, also offers bread and wine at the Last Supper. So it sounds like a really theologically rich painting.
Yeah, and then on the right side of the chapel, in the same chapel, above an archway in kind of a niche, I'm using the wrong architectural terms here, so...
You'll just have to go to Covington.
Niche works for
I'll be corrected on this.
It is awesome.
Sure.
I highly recommend a visit.
So it's an image of Christ breaking the bread on the road to Emmaus with the two disciples there. And so those are really the two paintings. I would go there just to check those out. And when I would go there and pray, I would really feel Christ's presence in that room. And I'm like, maybe it's the art. And I would always think something like, maybe it has to do with this weird Catholic furniture that's like right before me. So there's like a little altar rail, an altar, and a tabernacle, and that's their Blessed Sacrament chapel, which I had no idea.
AKA the Catholic Furniture Chapel.
Yeah, the Catholic Furniture Chapel. So
this is gold box.
Yeah, exactly.
Why does it feel so special?
I'm like, it does.
Yeah.
And so, my wife taught me how to genuflect, but she, this isn't a call out to her, but she didn't know what we were genuflecting towards either. Having been raised Catholic, nominally, like, she's just like, no, you just do this when you sit down. So I was like, no matter where I was, I would do that. Yeah. So I was always safe, but people would give me odd looks. But I didn't know what I was doing. So there was that. I would genuflect when I came into the main sanctuary. Should have been doing it in that chapel. But anyways, I could kind of interact there. And there was a few other places where I could interact too. near my mom's house, the Franciscans. I guess it would be a friary, right? A priory. Where do friars live? In a priory.
I think the friary is where friars live. I think the priory is where priests live, but I'm not positive about that.
Okay.
I don't know.
Sounds reasonable.
There's Dominicans in the priory, I know, and they're all priests.
Some are brothers.
I know do we have Dominican brothers?
I think so.
Not all Dominicans are priests.
Really?
Yeah.
See, I'm learning things on
There
the
was
Spirit
a
Spire
brother
podcast.
Ignatius here in town for a while, the
Park
Dominicans.
on the driveway, and you drive
That's right.
on the parkway.
So you friar in the priory and you prior in the friary.
Exactly.
What if you have a friar in the bakery?
All right, let's move on.
So-
Clearly, none of us know anything about it.
So there was a
Speaking of nuns, yeah.
yeah, there was an exterior votive chapel up on a hill, and I could kind of interact there. So
Should we shout out spiritinspire@gmail.com right now so that people can write in and tell us?
it's Spirit Spire at AOL.com.
Yeah. That's right. We also have Spirit Inspire at AOL.
Yeah, if you're a millennial and you'd like to write to us at Spirit Inspire
at AOL.
at AOL.com,
That's
please
a live email address.
feel free. Yes,
Yeah,
it is a live email address.
Help us solve the great mystery of, what is it, friary, priory?
Rectory. Refractory is where they eat. I know that. I'll never forget that one.
Yeah,
And the
refractory
reflectory
is
is not where they reflect. No, I don't know.
Well, refractory. Well, never.
Okay.
But no, that is actually a serious question, because not about refractories, but on this point, abbeys. I associated when I was younger with nuns, but it's actually correct for monks as well. So is there a distinction between monastery and abbey? Because I used to think, before I became Catholic, or even after that, before I learned, that monastery was for monks and abbeys were for nuns. But apparently abbeys can be used for both, but I don't think monasteries can be used for both. Or can
Clearly, we're going to have to
actually.
do an episode on this where we do research and we report back.
I think
findings.
monastery can be used for nuns, can't it?
Well, I think that aren't they switched? Whatever terminology we use here, they use the opposite in Europe.
Oh gosh.
Yeah. No, I'm serious.
Clearly
They drive on the wrong side of the road
exactly.
over there, too. Yeah.
Depends on where-
All right, we're leaving that aside, and we're coming back. You were at the St. Anthony
Oh, yes.
something.
So there's a St. Anthony shrine. That's where the Franciscans live. They have a small votive chapel outside where you can interact and light candles and pray, but you don't have to go in and really deal with anyone.
This was something your wife introduced you to, or how did you find
I
out about?
just was checking it out.
Okay, you were just looking for religious sites in the area.
Yeah,
or
I was
something.
just like, now I was kind of just pursuing things. So I would drive by that basilica, and one day when I had a lot of anxiety, I woke up from a nightmare the night before, and was dealing with all of this. I went into the Basilica in Covington still, and I lit a candle in front of Our Lady of Guadalupe. I didn't know what it was at the time. I'm like, this is a different Mary, that I'm not used to seeing this one. It was actually a statue too, so it wasn't the image that was on the tilma.
Okay.
And so I lit a candle in front of this statue, and I said a prayer, something like, if you can really, it probably wasn't as well put together as what I'm about to say, but if you can intercede for me, intercede on my behalf. And I immediately felt some comfort from that. And so I'm like, what's this Mary stuff? Which I wasn't, that was the one thing about Catholicism that I had no interest in even interacting with.
Was that rooted in the Southern Baptist background, the kind of idea that's sort of like idolatry or goddess thing?
I don't believe in God, but Marian stuff is idolatry to God. Like this was my psyche at this point in my life. So definitely logically consistent. So I thought about this Marian stuff. I started to ask my wife about it. And
were you married at this point, or still just dating?
Just still my girlfriend. Asked my girlfriend about it, and she's like, I don't really know too much about this Mary and stuff either. She's like, I do kind of think of Mary as like my mother, and this sort of thing. And she starts telling me about the rosary. She's like, there's this thing, the rosary. And I'm like, yeah, I've heard of that. Old ladies do that. And I've heard of this. So we go to a place that was in between my apartment in Silverton. I would drive down Montgomery Road to get to my girlfriend, aka my wife's house in Norwood. And there's this place called Our Lady of the Holy Spirit Center. It's definitely like dab smack in the middle between where I lived and where she lived. So, and my work was right there too. So I would go in and I started to explore this place. And if you've never been there, it's a crazy place. Just filled with the Holy Spirit. I don't even know the whole story on it, but if you get a chance, check it out. So I go into the Our Lady of the Holy Spirit Center in Norwood, Ohio, and it's a good place again for me to interact with things, but not people. And there's just huge reliquary in there, multiple chapels, outdoor prayer garden, and there's also teaching things there. So the theological virtues might be on the paver stones, and the prayer garden might be the rosary, or it might have something to do with the Divine Mercy in one of the chapels. So, or it has the Stations of the Cross. So you could literally walk in there and not be Catholic and start learning about this sort of thing.
Wow.
So I go there. And I tell my wife about it, and I'm like, we got to check this place out. We were into exploring cool places anyway, so even if you aren't Christian or Catholic, like, this is quirky enough to go. Let's go check it out. So I convinced my wife, and there's 2 rosaries. You can take rosaries. So she takes a rosary for her, takes a rosary for me, and she teaches me how to pray it. Which it was a battle getting through that first rosary because neither of us knew what we were doing at all. Even with the pamphlet, we were very confused. So we prayed the rosary out there, and I don't even remember what my intention was when we prayed it, but my wife's intention was that she was working on getting her Portuguese citizenship, and there were some problems with that, and she prayed that my Portuguese citizenship comes back okay. And so the next day, her Portuguese citizenship comes in, and we've been waiting on that for a long time, or she had. And she was less impressed by it than I was. I was like, what? I was in shock that we prayed about it, and then that ended up okay. I think, so I was like, now I'm real into this Marian stuff. I'm like, this is crazy. So I go back and I somehow come across the brown scapular. So I'm like, I got the rosary thing.
I got a quick, just one sentence thought on that. There's a course called Alpha, which is like Introduction to the Gospel for people who are, either away from the church or don't know anything about Christianity, but it's a Protestant guy who runs it. But he says, when I pray, coincidences happen. When I don't, they don't.
It's a good line.
It's a great line. So, no, you're great. And that's a great line. So I get the brown scapular, but that present, and it says that it can have benefits to even non-Catholics or Protestant Christians. But it also has a requirement that it has to be blessed specifically, or you have to be enrolled by a priest. And so that would require me to interact with someone. So I kind of pocket this thing, and I don't want to really think about it anymore because I don't want to interact with anyone at this point. So I see that so we want to go back to the Holy Spirit Center, and they're they're doing something. They're praying the rosary or something there, and I don't want to have to interact with people, but I was big on the Holy Spirit Center and praying there. So for whatever reason, it closed. They had an event there. I tell my wife, hey, we can't go there to pray the rosary, but I want to do this again. I know this place where the Franciscans have this shrine of St. Anthony in a different part of Cincinnati. We can go there. So again, they have these outdoor statuary and stuff, and we don't have to interact with people. So we drive there that night, And as we go up the hill into Mount Airy, I think it's in Mount Airy, off of Coleraine, and there's a line of traffic, and there's never traffic in this area. We're like, where are all these people going? And they're pulling into that St. Anthony shrine, and we start pulling in too. And I'm like, ooh, we should turn around and not go in. And my wife now is really enthused. Like, no, we need to go in. What is everybody doing? She gets really bad FOMO, so she's like, everybody's going in here. We need to go in here. So we get like parked way out in the grass, and we walk in with everybody, and like I said, I don't want to interact with people, but there's just a ton of people from all different walks of life. You can see like people of every single race are there. There's a lot of people with severe handicaps and disabilities going in. People with, I've never seen this in real life, but giant like tumors, it looks like, on their face, and all these sorts of things. So I never really even seen like people with such severe conditions, outside of TV or receiving some sort of care out in public. So I see all these people, and it touches me deeply then to see, oh my gosh, this is a very universal thing that I'm experiencing. Like, it's not just a Cincinnati thing or something like that. And so we go into the chapel, and it's the feast day of St. Anthony. And that's why everyone's there at St. Anthony's at this shrine. And I'm sure people came from all over. And so they don't even have room for everyone. So they seat us back in like those weird chairs that are for the monks, for like the choral chairs. So we're like back there with a bunch of other laity with the monks. And the homily that the friar gives, I still remember it is about St. Anthony, but I'm sure it's a little cliche now, but having never heard Catholic homilies before, it was really impressive that weren't about Xavier beating UC. It was really impressive to me about St. Anthony and how he's a patron saint of lost things, but how he finds people and he brings them back to Christ. And he's more about finding souls. Rather than lost objects and things. He's really enthusiastic about finding people. And so I don't know much about any of the saints. Like, even St. Joseph, I'm like, is that the same Joseph as in the Bible? Like, there's a disconnect there. So at the end of Mass, there's a blessing with a relic of St. Anthony. And so I get in line and we go up, and all the people, like, you would think you're in Europe because no one knew how to queue up. Like, everybody's just kind of shoving in there. And all the faithful queue up, and they're blessed with this relic, including all those people who were sick and suffering and had severe handicaps. And when I received the blessing with the relic, I definitely had like a religious experience in that moment. Like, something very profound happened. And I'm like, all right, I kind of believe in this now too. Like, what is this about? And St. Anthony. So yeah, that was a profound turning point. And at this point in my life, I'm also transitioning jobs. So I am trying to get a job in Louisville, Kentucky, where my wife's from. Transition to that from working in Cincinnati at the business that I worked at the time. And they hadn't even really, they had just started to talk and say they're going to start a Louisville location. So I said, well, I've got to get in on this. But I didn't know how to connect and do that. And so I think that's why we were going to go pray the rosary that night, was for that intention specifically. And that's why we really wanted to pray the rosary, because that works.
Yeah.
So
when you pray, coincidences happen.
Yeah. So, and when you don't, they don't. So, so yeah, we prayed there for that intention at the St. Anthony Shrine. And it wasn't long after that the founder of that company came down to buy the location from Louisville. And he just happened to fly into Cincinnati, and he did a tour of the store. And while he was in the store, he was just in street clothes and no one recognized him. But I recognized him. And while I was talking to him, we really connected and had a great conversation. Some other corporate guys were in there too, checking things out. And they had just happened to talk to a contractor who had been friends with my dad in high school. So he knew who I was, like the one guy who would really know who I was. And they're like, why do you shop at our store or whatever? And they're like, oh, because of Erik Huff. Even though I never did anything to help him. So like, it went really well for me. And I told him, I was like, you know, I don't remember if he said, is there anything I can do with you? Or I just weaseled my way in there. But I told him, I was like, I'd really love to work at that Louisville store once you get it together. So it's definitely given the opportunity then, and then that progressed. So my name from that point on was on the docket, and you know, there's no stopping me from going. So that worked out really well for me. And I still had that brown scapular that I told you about earlier. And at this point, I'm like so bought in that I'm like, I might be sneaking to masses at this point. I don't remember. But I'm like, oh, I need to go take care of this.
You're still avoiding people as much as you can, but maybe you're slipping in the back of church.
Sure. So I have the scapular thing. So one day I take it with me to work, and I have a 45-minute lunch break, and I go, oh, I'll just go to a church and get this done on my lunch break. Convenient for me, right? So at that point, I didn't know anything about the church and how it worked. I mean, how often can you just walk into a church on your lunch break and you're going to run into a priest? A, are you going to get into the church on your lunch break at, 1 o'clock, 1:30? B, is father going to be meandering around the sanctuary every second of that? It's very rare. So I didn't know that, though. I was pretty uneducated. So I went to St. Cecilia. It's in Oakley. It's near where I work. And I park in their lot, and I go into the side door, and I go in there and pray. And as I'm praying, I feel like I'm being told, like, just wait. Just wait. And my lunch break burns by, and I'm like, I'm hungry. I want to go get food. And I feel like, just wait. And I'm like, okay, now I should have been back for 15 minutes. Like, I'm going over. I'm going to get fired. I feel like, just wait. And then finally, I feel like, all right, get up and leave. And so I get up and leave. And when I walk out of the door of the sanctuary, there's a priest, and he's walking from his car to what I assume is the rectory or parish office there. And it's a very short distance between those two. If I walked out at any other point, I wouldn't have caught him. So he also has a dog with him, which is memorable and cool. So he's like, Fido, sit. And like the dog sits. And before he goes in, I go, Father? Like, I don't know what to call him. He looks younger than me, too. So I'm like, Father? And this could just be my imagination, but it could have been true. I'm pretty sure he snapped back with a, yes, my child, which I've never had happen again. So he comes up to me, and, I very frazzled. I start to pull the scapular out, and stuff's falling out of my pockets, and I'm like, I have this thing, and there's this rosary thing, but I don't know how I feel about Mary. And everything he says is just like, yes, our Blessed Mother. She always points us to Christ. And like, he just has these great lines. Everything I have to say, he's got a great response to. And I say, can you do this thing? And he's like, yeah, brown scapular, Our Lady of Mount Carmel. I'll be right back. Fido, sit. And the dog sits, and he goes in, and I'm just standing out here with his dog, waiting for him. And he comes back out with the big book of blessings or something, I'm sure. And he's got holy water. This is the first time I've really seen holy water. And it's in a container that says holy water on it. I'm like, oh, that's where it comes from. So anyways, I've got the scapular in my hands, and he's going through this whole ceremony, and he's really blessing the hell out of this scapular. And in the name of the Father and of the Son, and I remember a lady in a wheelchair, parishioner, comes up behind him, and as he's very serious about this kind of liturgy or whatever that he's doing with me, he's still so personable that as the lady with the wheelchair comes up, he's in the name of the Father, the Son. Hello, Janice, and the Holy Spirit. And so, the whole thing's really overwhelming, and he's leaving this great impression on me. And after he's done, he's kind of talking to me and telling me he's going to pray for me and that I should pray for him. This gentleman walks up, and the gentleman says, he says to him, do you work here? And the priest like looks down at his Roman collar and looks up at this like beautiful church, and he's like, yes, I work here. And the guy's like, you're boss, right? And everybody's about to look up at heaven, and he goes, no, the guy with the glasses. And then the priest is like, oh yes, Father Jamie. And he's like, yeah, him. He says I can sit here and read my book in your courtyard. And the priest goes, yes, anyone's welcome to sit in our courtyard. And he goes, and reflect and maybe even pray. And the guy's like, yeah. He says I can sit there. He goes, but this lady, this mean lady, do you know her? He's like, there's lots of women who are at this parish. They're welcome here too. He goes, no, she's real mean. She says I can't sit here and read my book because I'm not Catholic. And the guy's like, no, anyone can read their book here. And he goes, no, she's real mean. He goes, I understand. He goes, she's here every day. He goes, I understand. He goes, she helps with the so-and-so. And then the priest recognizes who it is. He's like, oh, Maurice or something? And he's like, yeah, her. She's so mean. He's like, well, we need to be forgiving of others even when they're wrong. He's like, she's so mean. And he goes, I understand. He goes, she's here every day. And the priest goes, I understand. He goes, she's so mean. And the priest goes, I understand. And he goes, she's here every day. Can you imagine if she was, what kind of monster she would be if she wasn't here every day? And we all just like buzzed out. Yeah, like he let us on that for so long. And so I leave there like, what just happened? But I knew like this was the type of life that I wanted to.
Mm.
So yeah, I was really sad to be leaving Cincinnati now because I'd met this priest and I was going to ask him about RCIA and moving forward. And I had a friend of mine ask me, are you excited about moving to Louisville from Cincinnati? I said, I kind of am. I am for some reasons, but it's also really, and my friend, it was one of my party buddies and work buddies that worked way too much with me. And so he was in a very similar place to where I was before. So, I didn't really want to share with him anything about my faith journey or anything like that. But he said, are you excited? I said, I am, but I was thinking about becoming Catholic. And I met this priest here, and now that I'm going to Louisville, I don't know anyone. And he said, well, that's okay. My cousin is a Catholic priest in Louisville, Kentucky.
Wow.
So yeah. So
Who was his cousin?
Father Jeff Schooner. Yeah.
I don't know.
Yeah.
Well, there's plenty more to the story, but I think that's a perfect time to end part one
We'll have to do a part two.
Yeah.
of the Erik
Absolutely.
Huff testimony episode. But obviously, eventually, you became Catholic. We'll hear more about
That's
how. But you came into the church. I know that you have a patron saint. Your confirmation saint is who?
St. Anthony.
That's right.
Good one.
And you ended up working under Father Jeff Schooner at St. Patrick's.
Yes.
And obviously there's a lot of beautiful moments after moving to Louisville too, which we'll definitely get into as the podcast progresses. But in the meantime, thank you so much, Erik, for sharing your story with us. Thank you to all of you for watching the episode. And if you want more Spirit Inspire, you can visit spiritinspire.com. If you want to interact with us, you can email us at spiritinspire@aol.com. And you can tune in next week for another episode of Spirit Inspire. Thanks for joining us. God bless.